I was sitting in the hallway on the 3rd floor when I realized my hands were shaking. It wasn't the first time, not even the 10th, but it was different. I had just walked out of room 23, where Mrs. Holloway had died about 20 minutes ago, and something inside me had cracked. I didn't believe in God, never had. My name is Sarah, and for almost 10 years, I had worked as a hospice nurse, accompanying people through the last days, hours, minutes of their lives. I had watched over 1,000 people die, 1,000 souls leaving tired bodies. And I didn't believe in souls. I believed in synapses stopping their firing, in organs failing, in chemical processes ceasing. But that night, something was different. And I couldn't stop shaking. If you're watching this now, please subscribe to the channel and leave a like. I know it seems strange to ask this right at the beginning, but this story needs to reach other people. It needs to reach you. So help me share it. I grew up in Portland, Oregon, in a completely secular family. My parents were university professors, both with PhDs, both proudly atheist. My mother taught evolutionary biology. My father, analytical philosophy. Our house smelled of strong coffee and old books, and dinner conversations were debates about empiricism, about the scientific method, about how religion was, in my father's words, the last refuge of the mind that's afraid to face reality. I grew up believing that death was the end, the absolute end, that consciousness was just a byproduct of brain activity, and when the brain stopped, everything stopped. There was no heaven, there was no hell. There was nothing but the void, and accepting that was being brave. It was being intellectually honest. I graduated from nursing school at 23 and worked in emergency for a while, but something pulled me toward hospice care. It wasn't compassion, not at first. It was curiosity. I wanted to understand death, wanted to observe it up close, demystify it, prove to myself that there was no mystery at all. Just biology. Just ending. I got my first job at a hospice in Seattle when I was 26, and in the first few months, everything confirmed what I already knew. People died, their bodies failed, their minds shut down. End of story. But then I started noticing things. Small things at first. Patients who had been unconscious for days would suddenly open their eyes in the final hours and speak with startling clarity. People who hadn't spoken in weeks would whisper names, describe visions, reach out for something I couldn't see. I rationalized everything. Cerebral hypoxia, hallucinations caused by medications, the brain doing strange things while shutting down. It made sense. I wrote everything down in a small notebook I kept in my uniform pocket. Clinical observations, nothing spiritual, never spiritual, but things got harder to explain. There was a man, Mr. Kaplan, a secular Jew like I was secular, who 3 days before dying started singing hymns in Hebrew that he swore he had never learned. There was a woman, Rachel, 28 years old, stage 4 ovarian cancer, fervent atheist, who grabbed me by the wrist on her last night and said, "Sarah, he's here, he's really here, and I was so wrong." I asked who was there. She said, "Jesus," and closed her eyes. She died 4 hours later with a smile on her face. I wrote in the chart, pre-death delirium, but my hands trembled as I wrote. Over the years, I saw patterns. It wasn't everyone, but it was many. People who had lived entire lives without faith suddenly spoke of light, of peace, of a presence. Not just Christians. I saw Muslims, Hindus, Buddhists, agnostics, all describing something. And the Christians, specifically the Christians, had something different, a certainty, a calm that didn't make medical sense. I had a patient, Dorothy, 76 years old, pancreatic cancer, who told me 2 weeks before dying, "Sarah, dear, I'm not afraid, because I know where I'm going. I know the one who awaits me." I smiled politely. Inside, I thought it was just a psychological defense mechanism, self-delusion to deal with existential terror. But Dorothy died differently. She died with her eyes open, looking at the upper right corner of the room. And her last words were, "Yes, Lord, I'm ready." And the room, I swear, the room became different. The light changed, the air felt lighter. I felt something on my skin, like a gentle vibration. And for a second, just 1 second, I was afraid. Not of death, of being wrong. I was 29 when my mother died. It was fast, hemorrhagic stroke. She was teaching on a Tuesday morning and collapsed in the middle of the lecture. She died in the hospital 3 days later without regaining consciousness. I was beside her. I held her hand. I watched the monitors. I watched the lines go flat. And there was nothing. No light, no peace, no vision. Just silence and machines beeping and nurses turning off equipment. My father fell into deep depression. So did I, but I buried mine in work. I worked double shifts, triple, anything not to think, not to feel. And the more I worked, the more I saw. More deaths, more small mysteries that I pushed to the back of my mind. Until the night of Mrs. Holloway. She was 82. Congestive heart failure, no family, no visitors. I was the only person in the room when she started going into multiple organ failure. It was around 2 in the morning. The hospice was quiet except for the usual sounds, distant monitors, someone coughing in another hallway. I was checking her vitals when she opened her eyes. She hadn't opened her eyes in 5 days. "Sarah," she said. My name. She shouldn't have known my name. She was unconscious when I took over the shift. "Sarah, you need to know." Her voice was weak but clear. I leaned in. "Know what?" I asked. She smiled. "That he is real. Jesus is real. I see him, and he's asking me to tell you that he's waiting for you too. He always has been." My stomach turned. I said, "Mrs. Holloway, rest, it's okay." But she squeezed my hand with strength she shouldn't have had. "It's not imagination. It's not the brain failing. It's him. Promise you'll search. Promise." I didn't promise anything. I just held her hand as she closed her eyes again. She died 8 minutes later. And when she died, I saw. I don't know if I saw or felt or imagined, but there was something, a presence, a light that came from nowhere, and a smell. Roses. The room smelled of fresh roses. There were no flowers there. I ran out of the room, sat in the hallway. And that's where I started shaking. Because for the first time in 10 years, in 1,000 deaths, I couldn't rationalize. Couldn't explain, and worse, I didn't want to explain. Something inside me wanted to believe, needed to believe, and that terrified me more than anything. I spent the next few weeks trying to return to normal, working, avoiding thinking. But Mrs. Holloway's words echoed. "He's waiting for you too." I started paying more attention to Christian patients, to the way they died, and it was undeniable. There was peace. Not always, not in everyone, but frequently enough to be a pattern. The Christians who truly believed, who had deep faith, they crossed through death differently, like they were going home. Not running from something, but going towards something. I had been working the night shift for most of that year. The graveyard shift, we called it, though the irony wasn't lost on any of us. Midnight to 8 in the morning, walking through dimly lit hallways that smelled of antiseptic and something else. Something I could never quite name. Death has a smell, you know. It's not what people think. It's not decay, not in a clean hospice. It's absence, the smell of life slowly evaporating. I had become so used to it that I didn't notice it anymore, the way you stop noticing the sound of traffic if you live on a busy street. But that night, after Mrs. Holloway, I noticed everything. The fluorescent lights humming overhead, the squeak of my shoes on the linoleum, the distant sound of a television someone had left on in the break room. Everything felt hyper-real, like I was seeing the world for the first time, and I didn't know what to do with that. I wonder, if you're watching right now, where are you watching from? What city? What country? Leave it in the comments. Because I felt so alone during that time. And maybe you feel alone too. But you're not. I wasn't. I just didn't know it yet. There was a nurse at the hospice, Margaret, who was Christian, evangelical. She prayed with patients when they asked, but never forced anything. I always thought she was a bit naive, honestly, kind but naive. One day, about a month after Mrs. Holloway, I was in the break room and Margaret was there, reading an old worn Bible. I had never talked to her about faith, about anything personal, but something made me sit next to her. "Margaret," I said, "can I ask you something?" She closed the Bible and smiled. "Of course, dear." I took a deep breath. "How do you know it's real? How do you know it's not just hope Self-delusion? She didn't seem surprised. She looked like she had been expecting the question. Because I've tried living without him, she said. And it's different. It's not about proof, Sarah. It's about encounter. You can't prove an encounter. You can only live it. I said I didn't understand. She said, have you asked to know him? Have you asked Jesus to reveal himself to you? I laughed. Not meanly, but because the idea seemed absurd. Asking someone I didn't believe existed to reveal himself. But Margaret wasn't offended. She just said, try it. What do you have to lose? That night, in my apartment, I tried. I felt ridiculous. I sat on my bed in the dark and said out loud, Jesus, if you're real, I need to know, I need to see, I need something. Nothing happened, no light, no voice. I went to sleep feeling stupid. But the next morning I woke up different. I can't explain it. There was a quietness inside me, a sense that something had changed. Something small but real. I started reading, not the Bible yet, but about Christianity, apologetics books, C.S. Lewis, Timothy Keller. I approached it like a scientist, looking for holes, looking for inconsistencies. But the more I read, the more things made sense. Not scientific sense, existential sense. Sense that filled holes I didn't know I had. The idea that life had meaning, that suffering wasn't random, that death wasn't the end, that I was known, loved, not by chemical accident, but by design, by choice. It took months, 6 or 7 months of reading, questioning, observing. I started going to a small church near the hospice, just to watch, in the back. Didn't talk to anyone, but I listened, and the words echoed. Especially when the pastor talked about grace, about how we didn't need to earn love, just receive it. That was so strange to me. I had spent my entire life earning grades, approval, respect. The idea of unconditional love, of unmerited grace, was almost offensive. But it was also beautiful, dangerously beautiful. The turning point came on a December night. I had a patient, James, 41 years old, advanced stage HIV, multiple complications. He had been a drug user, had lived a hard life. But 6 months before entering the hospice, he had converted, given his life to Jesus at a small church downtown. And now he was dying, but he wasn't afraid. He sang hymns, weakly with a broken voice, but he sang, Amazing Grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I was caring for him one night when he looked at me and said, Nurse Sarah, do you believe? I paused. No one had asked me directly before. I don't know, I said honestly. I want to, but I don't know how. He smiled. He had few teeth left. His face was sunken, but the smile was genuine. You just need to say yes, he said. Jesus already did everything else. You just need to say yes. James had been a philosophy major in college before the drugs took over. He told me that in one of our earlier conversations, back when he could still talk for long periods without getting winded. He said he had spent years reading Nietzsche, Sartre, Camus, all the existentialists, all the nihilists, trying to find meaning in meaninglessness, trying to be brave enough to stare into the abyss without flinching. And you know what I found? He had asked me. The abyss doesn't blink. It doesn't care if you're brave. It just swallows you. But Jesus pulled me out of that abyss, gave me something the philosophers couldn't. Hope, real hope, not wishful thinking. I had dismissed it at the time, thought it was just another conversion story, someone hitting rock bottom and grabbing onto religion as a life raft. But watching him die, watching him face the end with such peace, such certainty, I couldn't dismiss it anymore. This wasn't desperation, this was confidence. This was someone who knew, really knew, where he was going. That night, after my shift, I drove to a park near my house. It was almost midnight. It was cold. December in Seattle is gray and damp and depressing. I sat on a bench. I looked at the dark sky, and I said yes. It wasn't dramatic. There were no thunderclaps. But I said out loud, Jesus, I don't understand everything. I don't understand almost anything. But I believe you're real. I believe you died for me, and I want to follow you. I say yes, and something broke inside me. I started crying. I hadn't cried since my mother's funeral. But there, alone in that cold park, I cried. I cried for the decade I spent surrounded by death, without hope. I cried for the 1,000 patients I watched die, while believing they were going into nothingness. I cried for my mother, for my father, for myself. And as I cried, I felt something. Arms around me, not physical, but real. More real than anything physical. And a voice, not audible but clear, saying, "I've always been here. I've always been waiting." In the following days, everything changed and nothing changed. Externally, my life was the same. Same job, same apartment, but internally there was light. There was hope, there was purpose. I started reading the Bible. I really started going to church, not just watching. I talked to Margaret, who cried with joy when I told her. She connected me with other people, a Bible study group, a community, but not everything was easy. My father. I knew I had to tell him. I waited a few weeks, gathering courage. When I finally told him, by phone, there was a long silence. Then he said, "Sarah, I can't believe you're saying this. You were raised better than this, raised to think." That hurt. It hurt deeply. I said, "Dad, I am thinking. I'm thinking more than ever. I'm just reaching different conclusions." He said, "This is betrayal. To your mother, to me, to everything we taught you." And he hung up. We didn't speak for 4 months. 4 months where I questioned everything again. Was I crazy? Was it just trauma? Fear of death? But every time I thought about going back, I remembered that night in the park, remembered the peace, the presence, and I knew it wasn't delusion. It was the most real thing I had ever experienced. Work got strange too. Some colleagues were supportive, others distant. A doctor I had always had a good relationship with started making comments. "Sarah became a religious fanatic now," she said at a meeting, trying to sound like a joke. But it wasn't. It hurt, but I continued. Because now, when I entered patients' rooms, I saw differently. I saw the image of God. I saw eternal souls. And I could offer more than just physical comfort. I could offer hope. I could pray if they wanted. And many wanted. There was a man, Robert, 59 years old, lifelong convinced atheist, lung cancer. He and I had long conversations about faith. Debates, really. He was intelligent, articulate, skeptical. But he was afraid. He didn't admit it, but I saw it. In one of the last conversations, he said, "Sarah, what if you're right? What if there's something after? Did I waste my whole life?" I held his hand. "It's never too late," I said. "Jesus received a thief on the cross. In the final hours, it's never too late." He thought about it for days. A week before dying, he called me into the room. "I want to pray," he said. "I want to try." I prayed with him, simple prayer. "Jesus, I don't know if I fully believe yet, but I want to. Help me believe. Receive me." Tears ran down his face, and in the final days, there was peace. The same peace I had seen in so many others. And when he died, I knew he was safe, that he had found what he had been searching for his whole life. Robert had been a journalist, investigative reporter for one of the major newspapers. He had spent his career uncovering corruption, exposing lies, holding powerful people accountable. "I've seen the worst of humanity," he told me once. "I've documented atrocities, interviewed murderers, watched politicians lie to millions without flinching. If there's a God, why does he let all that happen?" It was the classic question, the one I had asked myself 1,000 times. And I didn't have a perfect answer, still don't. But I told him what I was learning, that God didn't create evil, that we did, that free will meant the possibility of choosing wrong, and that Jesus didn't stay distant from our suffering, but entered into it, died in it, conquered it. "That's not a satisfying answer," Robert had said, and he was right. It wasn't, not intellectually, but something about it resonated anyway. Something about a God who suffered with us rather than just watching from above. And in those final days, when Robert was too weak to argue anymore, I saw him soften, saw him open, saw him reach out for something beyond logic, beyond proof, beyond the cynicism that had protected him for so long. My father and I eventually reconciled. Sort of. It took a year. I visited Portland. We talked. I didn't try to convert him. I just lived my life in front of him. Showed the peace, the love, the change. He never accepted my faith. Still hasn't to this day, but he accepted that it was real for me. And we found a way to coexist. It hurts that he doesn't see. It hurts deeply. But I pray. I pray every day, and I trust that God is working. My father had always been my hero growing up, the smartest person I knew. He could debate anyone on anything and win. He taught me to question everything, to demand evidence, to never accept answers, just because they were comfortable. And those lessons, ironically, are part of what led me to Christ. Because I did question, I did demand evidence, not scientific evidence, but existential evidence, evidence of transformed lives, evidence of peace in the face of death, evidence of love that made no evolutionary sense. And I found it. Everywhere I looked, once I was willing to see. But losing his respect, or at least feeling like I had, was one of the hardest parts of my conversion. I had spent my whole life trying to make him proud, trying to live up to his intellectual standards. And now, here I was, in his eyes, betraying everything he had taught me, joining the ranks of the deluded and the weak-minded. It took me a long time to accept that I couldn't control how he saw me, that I had to follow truth wherever it led, even if it led away from his approval. I continued working in hospice care. It's been almost 14 years now. I've watched over 1,300 people die, and each death teaches me something about fragility, about eternity, about grace. I'm not afraid of death anymore, not mine, not others, because I know it's not the end. It's transition. It's a doorway. And on the other side, for those who know Jesus, there is life, real life, eternal life. Sometimes patients ask me, "Sarah, have you ever seen someone die without peace?" And I have to be honest, yes, I have. I've seen people die terrified, clinging to life with desperation, fighting until the last second, and it breaks my heart. Because I know what they're missing. I know what's available. And I speak when I can, when they allow it. I speak about Jesus, about hope, about forgiveness. Some listen, others don't. But I speak. There was a woman recently, Linda, 63 years old. No faith, no hope. She was terrified. She told me, "Sarah, I wasted everything. My whole life. And now it's too late." I sat on the edge of her bed. I held her hands. "It's never too late," I said. "You're still breathing. There's still time." She wanted to know how to start, how to find God after a lifetime without Him. I said, "You just need to talk to Him. Tell Him you need Him, that you want to know Him. He'll listen." She prayed with me that night, broken prayer, hesitant but sincere. And in the 5 days before she died, something changed. The fear left. Peace entered. She started talking about seeing Jesus, about feeling love, and when she died, with her daughter beside her, the last words were, "I see, I really see." The daughter looked at me, confused and amazed. I just smiled, because I knew what Linda was seeing. I knew who she was seeing. Linda's daughter called me 3 weeks later, asked if we could meet for coffee. I said yes. We met at a small cafe downtown, and she told me that she had been an atheist too, like her mother, like I had been. But watching her mother's transformation in those final days, watching the terror turn to peace, had shaken her. What happened to her? She asked. What did she see? And I got to tell her, got to share the gospel, got to explain what Jesus had done, not just for her mother, but for all of us. She didn't pray with me that day, didn't convert, but she took a Bible I offered her, said she'd read it, and I'm still praying for her, still believing that the seeds planted in those final days of her mother's life will bear fruit. That's what I've learned more than anything, that God works through death, uses it, redeems it. Every single death I've witnessed has been an opportunity. For the dying person, yes, but also for everyone around them. Family members, friends, medical staff. We all watch, we all wonder. And in that wondering, in that space between life and death, there's openness. Openness to questions we normally avoid. Openness to hope we normally dismiss. I think about Mrs. Holloway often, about her grabbing my hand with impossible strength and telling me that Jesus was waiting for me. about the smell of roses that shouldn't have been there, about the light I couldn't explain. And I realized now that she was an answer to prayers I hadn't even prayed yet, that God had been preparing that moment for years, preparing me through 1,000 deaths, to finally be ready to hear, to see, to believe. The hospice where I work has changed over the years. We've moved buildings twice, staff has turned over, new protocols, new medications, new equipment, but the essential thing remains the same. People come here to die, and I get to walk with them. It's a privilege I never imagined when I first started. Back then, I thought I was just documenting biological processes. Now I know I'm witnessing miracles. Small miracles, quiet miracles, but miracles nonetheless. Every time someone finds peace, every time fear transforms to hope, every time someone reaches out in their final moments and finds Jesus reaching back. Looking back now to that night in the hallway on the 3rd floor when my hands were shaking, I understand. God was calling me. Through 1,000 deaths, He was showing me. Preparing me, breaking me, not with cruelty but with love, because He knew I needed to see, needed to witness the supernatural so many times that my logic couldn't deny anymore. He meets each of us where we are, and He met a skeptical scientist in the middle of death and showed me life. If you're watching this now and something inside you is resonating, if you're feeling that pull, that restlessness, I encourage you. Don't ignore it. Don't rationalize it. Investigate. Ask, seek. Jesus said, "Ask and you will receive. Seek and you will find. Knock and the door will be opened." He's not hidden. He's waiting for you to say yes. And if you're in that place where I was, surrounded by logic and science and skepticism, I understand, I respect that. But I invite you to consider that maybe, just maybe, there's more. More than matter, more than synapses, more than void. That maybe the experiences we can't explain aren't glitches in the brain, but glimpses of greater reality, glimpses of God. My life isn't perfect now. I still struggle. I still have doubts some days. I still feel pain about the distance with my father. I still cry when young patients die. I still question why there's so much suffering. But I have an anchor. I have hope. I have Jesus. And that changes everything. Changes how I wake up, how I work, how I face death, how I live. There are nights still when I walk those dimly lit hallways and feel the weight of it all. The accumulation of grief, of witnessing so much loss. But even in those moments, there's something underneath now. A foundation that holds. A certainty that this isn't all there is. That every tear matters. That every life has infinite value. Because every person is made in the image of God. That death is not the final word. I'm sharing this story because it needs to be shared. It needs to reach nurses, doctors, caregivers who are where I was. It needs to reach honest skeptics who are searching for truth. It needs to reach people afraid of death. Please subscribe to this channel. Leave a like. Share with someone who needs to hear, because there are millions of stories like mine. Stories of encounter, of transformation, of Jesus meeting people in the most unexpected places. And the more we share, the more people can find hope. That night in the park, when I said yes, I didn't know what would come. Didn't know about the loss of relationships, the resistance, the struggle, but I also didn't know about the joy, the peace, the community, the purpose. And if I could go back, knowing everything, I would say yes again, 1,000 times yes, because Jesus is worth it all, worth every sacrifice, every difficulty, every moment of doubt. He's worth everything because He is everything. He is truth, He is life, He is the way. And if you're reading this like I was in that hallway with hands shaking, with the world turning upside down, I want you to know, you're not crazy, you're not imagining. That pull you feel, it's real. He is real. And He's calling you by name, like He called Mrs. Holloway, like He called James, like He called Linda, like He called me. And the question isn't whether He exists. The question is whether you'll answer, whether you'll say yes. I pray that you do. I pray that you find what I found. Not religion, not ritual, but relationship, life, Jesus.